Hello, everyone. My name is Antoni Cimolino. I'm the Artistic Director of the Stratford Festival. And today we are going to be meeting an extraordinary man of the theater, the director of our 2018 production of Coriolanus, a person who is a playwright, a person who's an actor, whose work has been performed all over the world. You'll know him. Maybe you haven't had a chance to hear him speak, and that'll be a treat today. We have with us Robert Lepage. Hi, Robert.
Hi, how you doing, Antoni?
I'm okay. They're strange times. And I was just saying to Robert a moment ago that we have both of us built theaters along with our companies recently. And now, of course, we are faced with a time of pandemic. So how are things in Quebec City for you and Ex Machina?
Well, it's very quiet, actually. Quebec City is already a very quiet city in the winter. So this is even quieter. It's kind of strange because, you know, it's our first year at the Diamond. The Diamond is, of course, the name of this new venue that we've built, and everything was going so well, and we're so happy, you know, that now we have to start all over again. We don't have the same kind of reputation or tradition as Stratford or other theaters have, so we have to start all over.
Well, strength to you in the months ahead.
Yeah.
Robert, let's go back in time to times when people could congregate in a theater. And I'm thinking now of your beautiful production of 887 that you acted in as well as writing. And you were performing it at the Edinburgh Festival in August of 2015. And you and I had dinner, and we were trying to find a project that would attract you to come and do at Stratford. And we began to talk about Coriolanus. And you talked about something that completely drew me in, and that was the role of the voices in this play.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, I should have introduced the play a little bit. Coriolanus is a play about a leader who is a military man. He's very proud. He's very accomplished, but he's not empathetic. He doesn't even like leadership. Probably his best quality is he's unable to lie. And therefore he suffers the price of not getting the support of the people. And the people are very important. Their voices are very important in this play. And normally it's staged with big crowds. And then, Robert, you told me about your vision of these voices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, of course, because the thing that's quite interesting in the play is that the real rivals are not Aufidius and Coriolanus. It's the voice of the people against the old established power, and that for me resounded a lot in our actual predicament, but also because we're very obsessed by social media, by how the press has changed its role with time, and how newspapers don't have the same impact as media, technological media and all that. So I was very intrigued, and you could find the sources of how that works, how the internet works, and how social media came about in Roman history. Because, you know, I was very, very surprised to discover, for example, the thumbs up and thumbs down thing that Nero or Caesar does at the circus is actually the same thumb up and thumb down that we have on Facebook when somebody likes something or doesn't like something. And then it goes further. The whole expression of the wall, for example, you know, the Romans had this thing called the wall, where you would go and you would write, okay, I'm looking for somebody to build this for me. Is there anybody here who knows about this or that? Somebody would write on the other side of the wall the answer. So the internet started to work pretty much with the same kind of vocabulary as the Romans did. And they even had this kind of wax tablet that had the exact same dimensions and rounded corners as the iPad. And people would write with sticks and wax like that. So that thing intrigued me, and I could actually understand that at that time when Rome is trying to establish the basis of its republic and democracy and all that the public opinion is important, and they would start to create these devices to have people give their opinion, but also elect tribunes to actually speak for them.
So the dissemination of information, the way that it was made bite-sized, was like the precursor to what we do today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Robert, let's talk about the people then. You know, by the time you directed this, and you did 2 workshops, right, in Quebec City, I think around 2017, 2016, 17.
Yeah.
And then you directed it in the spring of 18 for the final production. There was a real rise in populism during that course of time.
Yeah.
And is that what you're referring to in terms of the power establishment versus the people?
Well, yeah, in a certain way, but we were also at that time we were coming out of the whole 1% riots in the U.S. and so there was a lot of dissatisfaction. It wasn't just about how people complain and write their comments on tweet or on Facebook. It was also about the kind of social unrest that we were starting to see in different countries, and the closest, of course, was what was going on with the 1% riots in the United States, and then, of course, there's the whole Trump era that starts, and so I was very, very concerned by that. I didn't want to model the show on one specific conflict or one specific subject. I wanted it to be kind of more freeform, so that it applied not just to international political realities, but also to our local political realities. And of course, after that, a lot of stuff happened in Canada. so it's I tried to leave it open as much as I could, because I know that Stratford has an international, universal audience also, who people come from all over the place, and they come from different political realities, and so I didn't want it to make it a very specific thing.
And so in that regard, it's a modern setting against Roman iconic ruins and monuments. Yeah, so it feels both like it's Italy and Europe, and also that it's the United States and Capitol Hill and the senators and congressmen. It very much feels international. What was the inspiration of modern versus ancient?
Well, I had the chance, like a year before we started this whole creative process in Coriolanus, to perform in Rome. And it's quite interesting, because you're in a very modern, contemporary hotel, and you're watching television, and you're watching local politicians speak and all that. And then you walk out and you have these ruins and these temples, and what used to be the Senate, and what used to be a public place where tribunes would speak and all that. And it's all kind of clashes and mixes and all that. So I thought it was interesting to set it in a kind of modern day imaginary Rome, where the future is filled with the past, right? So you always have reminders of what this society used to be, and how we never learn from history, which is, I mean, it's certainly not in these days. Is that you look at what's going on in Europe, and certainly in those days, 2-3 years ago, with the rise of all the neo-fascism starting, all that, and you go, do people remember that just like 50 years ago, we were coming at maybe 60 years now, we were coming out of a world conflict that was all triggered and that started on these exact same things. So people's memories are very short. So it was important for me to create a kind of an environment where whatever conflict or tragedy is being played in front of you, even though it's contemporary, that in the background there's always a reminder or an echo from the past.
I remember having a discussion with you about one particular scene where you have the Senate meeting in a bathhouse, and having a discussion in the caldarium. And you had research done on this, and do you tell us about the discovery?
Yeah, it's just that, of course, this was completely intuitive, and the intuition was confirmed as a good one later on. Is that in the early days of democracy, I guess, people did not have all these very fancy auditoriums where the Senate would meet and they would talk and all that, and they would look for places where the sound would be good, where people would be heard if they're just standing in the middle of the room, that would have a certain shape, so they would hang out in bathhouses, and that's where a lot of these first speeches and these first meetings happen, in bathhouses, and so it was quite a coincidence, but I guess more of an intuition than anything else, because we know that at the time power was something that belonged to men, and so it was a place for men only. So it felt a bit kind of it was a kind of a kooky idea when we started toying with it. But then, of course, when we discovered this thing, that actually these places were called bathhouses. When they'd have a meeting in the bathhouse, that's what they would say. Of course, that changed, and when they actually built actual buildings to have these conversations and these meetings, they kept the nickname of bathhouse.
Yeah, it's funny about all that changed with time as people, as the ancient world went away and the feudal era began. They probably wouldn't know what a bathhouse would be. Now, listen, Robert, the use of technology in this production. Mm-hmm. You said this play is not about any one thing, but among the things that it is about, it feels to me like it's partially about how we communicate in the modern era, the separation between source and listener, and the communication. There's texting, there's radio, there are cameras that capture. What were your thoughts in trying to lay all that out?
Well, there's something very practical about new technologies, is that if, I mean, you know better than I do, you do big productions, and we're always kind of preoccupied by cast size and are there going to be a lot of soldiers in that battle? Are there going to be a lot of tribunes in that scene and all that? So we're always preoccupied by shows that we can't really stage anymore because we don't have the means to have so many people on stage and all that. And technology offers a kind of an option. If you're going to set something at the time of talk shows or talk radio, you don't need to have 200 people on a public square screaming to the politician what they think. You have three guys sitting around a talk radio table, and they get you hear the voices of people calling in, and that's how the whole piece starts. So there's something very practical about using technology, because we're in the age where we have these huge forums, but they're all, of course, they imply that this one person alone sitting in his living room with a video, doing a video conference, So that for me there was something very practical about that we could actually pretend that there was a lot of people on stage. When in fact, there was very few people on stage compared to other Coriolanus stagings, or what usually one of these Roman plays asks of a theater company.
Robert, as I said at the beginning of this, you're a playwright, you're a director, you're an actor, but one of the things you also are is you're a magician, in the sense that you are able to create magic on stage, and metaphors, visual effects that surprise us and help us see things in new ways. And I mention magician because they don't like to tell people their tricks. Yeah. So what are you comfortable? People who watch this film are going to see a stage production that was mesmerizing. It had both a reality and a way of dissolving that reality, which was filmic, to say the least. How did you arrive at the shape of the stage, the ideas behind it, in the roughest terms, so that people aren't looking for the how it was done?
Yeah. Well, the thing is that in the audiences today have a very, very strong and cultivated film vocabulary. People are used to having stories told to them through television and through film, and they know, without knowing the actual terms, they know what a flash forward is, a cut to, there's all these techniques that help you understand how the story goes. And so I wanted to use that vocabulary, but in the theater. And what the advantage of that was that by framing what was going on, very often you could actually, like in cinema, as somebody is saying something, you could actually frame on something else, or on somebody else's reaction. So you kind of underline certain ideas that you can't really do on a broad stage. I mean, you could do a lot of stuff on a broad stage, but it's just that you don't control the focus of the audience as much or as well as a film shot. So there was a kind of a control thing that was going on with this, because Coriolanus is a wonderful play, but it is, of course, it's all over the place, and it takes a lot of editing and a lot of cleaning up for the main plot to come out. And so it was important for me to have a bit more control on what the people see and what you choose them to see. And of course, you have to fight with a public that resists that, because they come to the theater to be free to turn their heads and to actually zero in on something that's not exact. So you have to constantly try to, in a very non-violent way, frame what you want them to see and actually be playful with the audience. The audience liked, we turned it into a kind of a game. You know, people liked having segues and almost camera pans happen, even though they weren't done with a real camera. They were done with just kind of two panels that would be moving on one side, or so. So you had to, by using that vocabulary, that framing vocabulary, you had to transform it into some kind of a game, some kind of a fun thing. So people would always go, okay, oh, I understand. Oh, right. Oh, this is how it's done. This is so the audience feels intelligent as you're trying to fool it. They feel intelligent. They feel, this is the rule of the game. Oh, I get it. Oh, this refers to this kind of shot. This kind of. So there's a lot of double play and double entente in the staging that people enjoy, and we all enjoy feeling intelligent, don't we?
Robert, you directed Coriolanus when you were the director of the National Arts Center French Theatre. I don't know if it was exactly there, but this is a play you've returned to. How did it change in the 30 years or 25 years that had passed, and what drew you back to Coriolanus?
Yeah, well, actually, what drew me back to doing Coriolanus, because the first version that I had staged didn't satisfy me enough. And of course, I did not have the means in those days to do the full-blown idea that I had, which was this idea of this whole camera kind of framing thing. We had one big giant frame, and everything was played with that, and it was set nowadays, of course. So a lot of the ideas were already there. The only thing is that people were less preoccupied by let's say the themes and the ideas that were in the play. They're more preoccupied today, maybe because things have evolved so much and we've been through so much turmoil. And I'd have to say that this was like in 1989 or something like, or 1990, and people didn't really have a good understanding of what was at stake in Coriolanus. So the play was interesting. I think we did a good job, but I'd say there were very, very shy ideas there that with time kind of grew in the back of my brain or something. And then when I got the chance to do it again, to really do it full blown with all the means that I needed to express what it is I wanted to express.
So I have to ask you, having done it now, and we've got a film that people are going to watch, were you more satisfied?
Of course. Yeah, well, that's the thing. There's one thing, I mean, there's the directorial work, of course, and there's the design, there's all of that, and I think that we did a good job. But it's the meeting with these amazing actors, and when you get the chance to work with these fantastic Stratford actors who know much more about sometimes the text than you do, and it's an exchange. I mean, that's the things that you have your idea, this is what you want to do, this is how you see the character, this is how you see the scene. But actors, certainly Stratford actors who have all this experience in doing Shakespeare and all that, have a lot to say. And you have to be open to that, and you have to let that in. And I think it's that amazing collaboration that gave way to all sorts of extraordinary discoveries that we did along the way. So that's why we did these workshops very early on. I had these very vague things that I'd say to them, and some situations, and they would just kind of be actually allowed to suggest stuff and do stuff and all that. And the rehearsal room was filled with ideas and propositions that weren't all my ideas. They were mainly the actors' ideas. So that was amazing for me. It was a great learning process. We had a lot of stuff to teach to each other. And so even though my concept, I think, was a solid concept when we started, um, it would have been very, very stale and very arid if they hadn't uh, taken it and chewed it and break it, and so it was a very, very playful process, and I'd say 75% of all the great ideas there didn't come from me. That's for sure.
Well, I know that company loved working with you, and we have to get you back to Stratford soon. We are cooking something up. We're not going to give anything away, but
Yeah.
Robert, as they say, à la prochaine.
Avec grand plaisir.
Thank you.